this special module on inner development, discovery and management of self, VEV 731. Let me introduce to you Pravrajika Divyanandaprana, the instructor of the course. She is a monastic member of Sri Sharda Math, currently stationed in Ramakrishna Sharda Mission, New Delhi. She served as the principal of Nivedita Vidya Mandir School for many years and is currently the editor of journal titled Samvit. She has been traveling both within India and abroad as well to deliver talks on applied yoga and Vedanta, and it's an absolute privilege to have this course offered by here for IIT Delhi students. A little about the course. So it's a pass and fail course. I hope everybody understands that. And the structure of the course is the following. So we have 9 theory lectures. The duration of each lecture is going to be 1.5 hours. That sums up to 13.5 hours. We'll have so we have half a credit left for the practical, and since the number of credits is actually the half the number of hours that you spend in practicals, so you'll have a practical for 1 hour duration that will account for half the credit. The schedule for the theory lectures has already been shared with everybody. Regarding the practicals, that will be done as per mutual convenience and availability at the end of the session. The passing criteria is to have 11 out of the total 14 hours of classes attended. That's the pass criteria. Any other questions, please feel free to contact me. Let's begin.
We'll begin with a prayer. Om asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti. So welcome to this course. I'm happy about the title chosen for the course, Discovery and Management of Self. So I'm also glad to hear that you are all interested in the philosophical and psychological aspects of your own being. So this is what we are going to discuss as part of this course, because it's pretty obvious. You see, what is the point in managing everything in the outer world without managing yourself first? If you know everything about everything and you don't know how to manage yourself, you have no idea of how to manage your thought and your emotion, your will, who you are actually. If this concept is not clear, then there's no point in trying to manage things, just fixing things outside, because you are a participator. So getting a hold over yourself, this is the intention of this course. That's why we are going to introduce as part of your practicals meditation and also some amount of activity based on this, what we are going to study. In the theory lectures, mainly we are going to concentrate on, I've been asked to concentrate on Eastern and Western philosophical aspects of self. What we mean by this I sense in us. So it will be something interesting to you, because who is not interested in the I? Everybody is interested in knowing who he is, isn't it? So it's an inner exploration. We will be covering the Eastern and Western aspects of self. We will be covering the human personality paradigm as it is understood. What is the human personality about? Who we are and how we are functioning. This was something we will be discussing, and then we will be discussing mind and perception, because you see, your entire experience of life has to do with your perceptions, both external and internal. So how does this happen? What are the criteria, and how can you augment that perception? How can you make it subtle so that your experiences in life are according to your wishes and not according just to the external situation? So mind and perception is something we will be studying. Then we will be studying self-management skills, which means how mind management basically. How do you handle your thought, emotion, will, attitudes? So this is a very important science, trying to know how I function and how I can function better. So all of this will be under observation. Of course, you will be studying the 3 different types of quotients, because intelligence is not just restricted to intelligent quotient, not just your IQ. It is also about EQ, SQ, VQ. There are a number of factors involved. So, we will be studying all of them. Then you have techniques of mind management as part of this course, which obviously is very important. Then you have neuroscientific perspectives on mind management. So, something of neuroscience also we will be studying. What light exactly our philosophies throw on all these topics, we will be studying that. Then you have modern problems and ancient remedies in order to how to counter stress, depression, all these negativities in the modern youth. For that, what were the ancient remedies? Some discussion on that will be there. Then we have research methodologies, which means qualitative and quantitative research, first person, third person research, which is based on all this, how to improve the quality of human thought and emotion and the human perspective, which means apart from thought and emotion, is there anything about you and how do we enhance that awareness of yourself in order to handle thought and emotion better. So, this will be under observation, and then of course applied Yoga Vedanta will be studied. All of this we will be studying as part of this course, and then of course your practical sessions will be there. This is the theory portion which I told you about. Now, today's session is especially entitled, Who am I? Now, this is a question we all ask. Everybody asks this question. What is the unchanging element in me? Of course, we know we are functioning through this body-mind complex. As soon as, suppose I just ask you, close your eyes and think about what you mean by I. You will say a picture of my body appears in my mind. But please see this, you are seeing that picture of your body. Your mind is seeing it. Your intellect is acknowledging it. And the entire thing is happening in your awareness. So, all these elements are part of your personality. When you say I, it includes your body, it includes your mind, it includes your intellect, it includes your awareness, what we call consciousness. So, all of these together constitute the human personality, but you are essentially what? What is the unchanging element here? If you actually pierce through this question, you will see it is only the I sense. Awareness is the permanent factor here. The rest is all changing. Your intellect is growing every day. Your mind is changing constantly. Your body, of course, is changing. If I showed you a picture of yourself as a baby, you may not recognize it. That much the body has changed. The mind is constantly changing. Intellect is growing. But awareness is the constant factor. So, if you can handle yourself from this standpoint, you see all the rest of you, what you are calling yourself, can be handled. So, this is what actually meditation and spiritual practices aim at, catching the essential you, the unchanging you, identifying it, isolating it to a certain extent. You will see actually you are not isolating anything, you are just being your real self, and the rest is actually objective to your experience. So, getting a hold of, just now in the theory it may sound something fantastic, something wonderful. When you do the meditation practice, you will see this is the perfect possibility. In fact, it is your essential nature to be distanced from merely mind activity. This is your essential nature. So, all this will be coming into this course. Let me tell you that this is not new knowledge, although in different ways yoga is being practiced all over the world, and so many streams of yoga have come up. This is a very old ancient practice. आपने तो वेदों का नाम सुना है? In the Vedas and in the Upanishads, which is actually the essence of the Vedas, you see this is a 4,000-year-old, not even 4,000, 4,000 BC. Indian scholars place Rig Veda at 4,000 BC, which means they are the oldest texts available to humankind. Here you will find research into this self, what we are calling self, the real unchanging I. So, at a time when civilization itself had not sprung up in most parts of the world, at that time this level of research, you can call it consciousness research, research on consciousness, the science of consciousness, that was taking place here in a very deep way. Some of the questions in the Upanishads, which is the actual essence of the Vedas, if you read those questions, you are simply struck dumb. What are they exactly trying to discover and what are they trying to tell us by means of these questions? See, they are trying to discover the unchanging you, that aspect of you which is permanent, which is, you can say, like a background substratum to all your mental activity, to your physical being. It is behind all of this. And yet they found that it is due to the presence of consciousness that the mind is becoming conscious. That's why you have conscious experiences. Have you ever thought like this? Why do I have conscious experiences? What's the difference between an inanimate thing and me? I have conscious experiences. What's the source of that? They found consciousness to be the source of that. Even the body is enlivened, functioning as a conscious entity by itself, appearing to be conscious by itself, because there is consciousness somewhere. And so the entire research was to track this source of your being, pure consciousness itself. This is what is called the Atman in the Upanishads. And all of this literature is devoted to discovering this Atman, discovering the source of your personality, you can say, the source of your true being, the source of your mental functions, pure consciousness. It's a discovery towards that. So if you read the Upanishads, you will find this is the recurring theme there. Atmanam vidhi, mrityu samrityum apnoti yaiha naneva pashyati, which means know yourself. A person goes only from death to death who sees only multiplicity here, only diversity. He doesn't know the source of things, the unitary source of everything. You will find mantras like this. Tattvamasi Shvetaketu, Chandogya Upanishad, again and again. You are that supreme Brahman. You are that consciousness because of whose existence everything else appears to exist. It borrows existence, as it were. It appears to be conscious, as it were. Because there is this source of consciousness which is the supreme reality. Whether you call it Brahman, Atman, these are all the words used in the Vedas. Essentially they are pointing to the very heart of existence. And the entire research is on this. So we have 4 Vedas and we have a number of Upanishads. These Upanishads are nothing but Vedanta itself means Vedon ka sar, the essence of the Vedas. Now the word Upanishad, it actually means Upa plus Ni plus Sad dhatu with Quip pratyay. It means sitting close to a teacher. To do what? In order to get this knowledge, get the knowledge of the supreme existence, unitary existence of all creation. To get this knowledge, Brahma Jnana, jo kehte hain, Brahma Vidya, to get this sitting close to a teacher. Remember, Vedas were transmitted by word of mouth. In those days, they did not have such communication systems, isn't it? So it was transmitted, that's why it's called Shruti. It has to be heard from the teacher. It has to be contemplated through the words of the teacher. And this is how the Vedas were transmitted. This knowledge was transmitted over the centuries. Today we are getting it in its purest form. This knowledge is considered so very important in this particular culture, everywhere in the world actually, because this is to do with yourself. Please see this. This is self-knowledge. आपका ही परिचय दे रहे हैं आपको. They are introducing you to your real being. If you actually try to track the I sense in you, it will take you into this research. इसीलिए who am I question, what am I actually, how do I function, all these become so very important. Because if you live in a world where you do not know yourself, you do not know how you are functioning, you will give in to things external readily. But if you have a hold on yourself, you know how this particular system functions, then in any place you can handle yourself well. In very trying situations also you can remain very stable and balanced. Isn't it? And even if there was no practical usage of this, knowledge itself is important, isn't it? Just to know who I am is very, very important for its own sake, because it liberates your mind. It expands your mind. Knowledge in its own right, on its own stand, it is sacred. It has always been considered sacred in our culture because it leads you towards the truth. So the second aspect of it is its practical usage, but primarily it is a system of knowledge, very profound knowledge, which is giving you an introduction to your true being. This is what self-knowledge is about. This word Atman is used to indicate yourself, the unchanging aspect of you, as I told you. Now, in the Upanishads, this self had been found through all the research that they did, it was meditative, isn't it? जब कोई इस ज्ञान को पाने की कोशिश करता है, what does he resort to? Inquiry and meditation. There should be self-inquiry and meditation based upon that. So this entire research is based on meditation. That is why a meditation practice is being introduced for you. A certain calmness of the mind is required in order to pursue this research. Through their practices, what did they find regarding this Atman? You see, आपने सुना होगा, I am using the word consciousness constantly. What does consciousness mean? That which gives you conscious experiences. What is the proof that there is consciousness? The fact of conscious experiences, isn't it? Now if I ask you, what is the proof you have hands and feet? You will say that I am able to do things, that I am able to walk. That is the proof that I have hands and feet. What is the proof that I have eyes? That I can see. Now I am asking you, you have conscious experiences, so that should be proof of what? Consciousness, obviously. So it is a research into this consciousness. This is what self-knowledge is actually about. And this consciousness has been described as Sat, absolute existence in the scriptures. What does this mean? अब देखिए, in your own experience you can catch this. You require awareness to validate the existence of anything else, isn't it? Only if you are aware, then you can perceive something. If you are not unaware, you cannot perceive anything. So awareness is required to testify to the presence of anything else. So what will be required to testify to the presence of awareness? There cannot, this is a logical impossibility. Because you are aware, you perceive. That is why it is aware, absolute existence belongs to awareness alone. Did you catch the point? It is a logical impossibility to say that, something else is required to become aware of awareness. It is only due to the presence of awareness that you are able to perceive. So absolute existence belongs only to the Atman. That's why it is called Sat. ये उसका definition है. It is of the very nature of absolute existence. Many such terms are used. Everything has a logical, very rational stand. You see, Upanishads, the Vedantic literature is very scientific. I told you it's a science of consciousness. So it's very rational and logical. They will tell you it is eternal. Atma vastu jo hai, wo sanatan hai, shashvat hai. Why is it eternal? Does it mean it's going to persist forever and ever? What they mean to say is actually eternal is not the right word because it includes time. Consciousness is before the mind. When mind begins, time begins. So in a sense, that is why it transcends the mind, so it transcends the element of time. That is why it is, colloquially speaking, we say it is eternal. Shashvat hai. So like this, every single word, epithet, every attribute which you are giving to describe the Atman has very profound something behind it, which you have to discover only through deep level inquiry and meditation. तो इस क्लास में थोड़ा focus चाहिए. It is not just that I am going to introduce a few concepts of philosophy and psychology to you. थोड़ा सा intent focus चाहिए इस क्लास में. If you are able to give that, you will catch this knowledge just like that. It will be something very interesting because it is a discovery of yourself, your true being. So just focus and you will be able to gain this. Now let us go into, I will tell you how actually Vedanta was transmitted and it is studied. Right here you can grasp a few facts about it. Not that you require a 3D model to understand what they are talking about. See, it is called Phenomenological Inquiry actually. It is a way of inquiry which will give you a sense of what we are talking about right here and right now. It is a way of penetrating within. इस पर एक पूरा session है हमारा, what we are calling Phenomenological Inquiry. But here, right now, I just want you to sit straight. Yes, come on, sit straight. Get a little focus. Doesn't matter if you don't close your eyes, but sit still. And you will see how this Phenomenological Inquiry works. अपने बारे में ही चिंतन है ये. Few fundamental facts about what we are going to study will become clear right now. See, just think about this. When you are thinking, suppose now, just now if you close your eyes and see your mind activity, there are a number of thoughts in your mind. Just now you are listening to me, thoughts are there. Even when there is the absence of thought, you are there. You as awareness are always there. Thoughts are coming and going out of that awareness. Can you see this clearly? देखिए, आप सोच रहे हो, जब आप सोचना बंद करते हो, you are acknowledging the stopping of thought, which means you are there, isn't it? You as awareness are seeing your thought process objectively. You can also see the absence of the thought process. So basically I want to just point out to you, open your eyes, just look at this, thought is objective to your being. ये पकड़ में आया? You can tell me about your thoughts, which means you saw them as a witness. You can do metacognition. Metacognition का मतलब है thinking about thinking, because you were always objective. Thought was always objective to you. You were not identified. If you make this a kind of practice, in that 5-minute meditation session, you see this is part of the practice. Thought is always objective to your being. That is why you can acknowledge the presence of thought and also the absence of thought. You as awareness continue always. Thought comes into that awareness, moves out, next thought comes, it moves out. तो यहीं पर आप ये पकड़ सकते हो, awareness is more fundamental to the thought process. Thought can be made objective to my being. If I rush and identify with the thought, if I am overexcited about the thought, I may identify with it. But then I have willingly identified. Otherwise it was objective to my being. Right? So also your body. Just now think and see your toes, you are aware of your toes. You are aware of your feet. You are aware of your shoulders. You are aware of your face. You are aware of your posture sitting here still. You are aware of your body is not aware of you. Right? Take. Is your body aware of you? You are aware of your body. What does this mean? Awareness belongs to you, the subject. Body is objective to your object of your experience. Objective to your experience. You see, your mind, your thoughts are objective to your experience and your body is objective to your experience. You, the awareness, are the subject. The rest is an object to you. When you think something, how do you think? You say they are my thoughts. You don't say me the thought, isn't it? You feel something nice, you say they are my feelings, I had such beautiful feelings, I had such happiness. They all belong to you, they are not you. This is always your experience, only आपने ये notice नहीं किया है. You didn't notice this basic fact about yourself. Now in this class, today's session especially, you should notice these fundamental facts about your being. This is called Phenomenological Inquiry, which means from the standpoint of the subject, how does the thing feel? I am not going to bring an apparatus to tell you how you feel. Not a third person perspective, first person perspective. Experience is always in the first person. You must learn to do phenomenological inquiry in the first person. And you will see the truth of what they are saying. अगर ये inquiry खुद ही ना कर पाओ, this will appear like a huge theory. Thought is objective to my being, I am the self. This appears like a fantastic theory. This is no theory. You are working, functioning like this always, all the time. You the awareness, the unchanging awareness, functioning through a body-mind complex. This is the definition of you in the Upanishads. Consciousness functioning through a body-mind complex is the jiva, is the unit whom you call me, I. And you are not just body and mind. So, some of these things, see, one more thing let me introduce here. The nature of your I sense, they say it is completely separate completely different from your body. Which means what? Now suppose you have a tummy ache, stomach ache. Kuch McDonald's mein kha liya or you got a tummy ache. Now you cannot pinpoint where the pain is, what the pain is due to, kya ho raha hai. You just feel a little uncomfortable, that's all. But an external instrument is required to tell you where the pain is. You cannot pinpoint the pain because the body is objective to your experience. The whole medical science will tell you this. It is required for you to know what is happening in your body. You cannot know it. Right? One more thing. There are experiences in you when you are quite apart from your body and yet your sense of existence continues. For example, in your dream state, suppose who is the current cricket superstar? I think Virat Kohli, right? So now Virat Kohli, suppose you adore him so much that you got the body of Virat Kohli, let's say. Now you don't mind, you are very happy about it. What I want you to see is you as a conscious entity, as a conscious being, continue without reference to the physical body in the dream. So in your dream you don't doubt it, isn't it? In fact, you are very happy that you have the body of Virat Kohli. So what I am saying is conscious experience or entity continues, body changes, mind changes, but you continue always. ये पकड़ में आया आपको? समझ में आया? There is an unchanging I in you. If you try to understand these few points with utter stillness of mind, you will see they are absolutely true. There is a conscious being continuous, unfluctuating in me, who continues even when everything else changes. Without reference to this body and mind, it continues. So that is why the Upanishad is telling you, you are essentially the Atman functioning through a body-mind complex. तो ये कुछ theory नहीं बोल रहे हैं, अपना ही experience analyze कर रहे हैं. This is everybody's experience. It is happening to all of us. Only we have not learned to think like this. So when we talk of self-knowledge, self, you always are. You are the self. You are functioning through a body-mind complex. You must learn to understand it this way. Whenever we refer to myself, I, मैं, the tattva, the actual source of that I is consciousness itself. This is what they are telling you. If you suddenly ask, where do I find that consciousness? You know, there is this little story, जो बोलते हैं, even I think in Zen Buddhism they use it. There was a huge ocean, Indian Ocean, in which there was a school of fish, and one small fish was asking his mother, "Mother, where is the ocean? I want to see the ocean." And the mother fish said, "You are in the ocean." And the little fish said, "No, I am in water. I want to see the ocean." And the mother fish said, "But this water is the water of the ocean. This water is nothing but the ocean. The whole collection of water is what we are calling ocean. But you are verily in it. It is so obvious that you miss it. You miss the point." So also, जब आप पूछते हो ना, आत्मा क्या है? What is the Atman? What is Brahman? What is the supreme reality? You are that. Your awareness. You see, presently what you are feeling is your mental awareness. It's a reflection of that. And you are asking for Brahman. You are asking for the ocean being in it. So, इसको पकड़ने के लिए all you need is a very steady mind. A very stable, quiet mind. If you have that, Vedanta ऐसे ही आप पकड़ पाओगे. If you don't have that, manufacture it through yoga. That is the means. You know, we generally call Vedanta as the science of consciousness. Yoga is the technology of consciousness. And here, the technology leads to the science. Technology is not a mere fallout for external purposes. The technology leads to the science. So, if you still bring your mind to a certain level of stillness and stability, you can just know these facts. They will just enter your mind because they are already there. Consciousness ऐसी वस्तु नहीं है which is external to you. You are the consciousness. That reflected in the mind is making the mind alive. That reflected in the body is making the body conscious, enlivened as it were. and then you are identifying with this body and mind and considering yourself to be only that. So this is how the human mechanism is functioning. Only the human being has this capacity to reflect on himself and understand these basic facts. You can do it by the power of yoga. This intense stability, inner stability of mind and stillness of body, the human being can manufacture, and that is why these insights can come into the human life easily. तो यही है योग और वेदांत की विशिष्टता. It's a do-it-yourself science. You penetrate into it yourself. Remember, every deep level science, you have to do it yourself. It involves you, and any science you take up, you will encounter consciousness. Even physical sciences will lead you to this. So, any science will lead you to this. It is good to know how our ancients conducted this inquiry without any external instrument, equipment, without taking the third person perspective, just by analyzing thought, what lies behind thought, how did they arrive at this truth. तो यही technique है, एक method है. One more clue, let me give it to you here. See, there are 3 states you pass through. You are passing through, every day you experience वो जो कहते हैं जागृत स्वप्न सुषुप्ति, which means you are in the waking state and then you are in the dream state at night, and you pass through a state of very deep sleep where there is no dream. These are the 3 states we pass through every day, right? Now if you analyze these 3 states, you will see there is a common factor here. There is a common denominator to these 3 states. How do you know there is a common factor? See, in your waking state, your senses are active, wide open, and mind is also active, right? That is the waking state. You are experiencing this world. In the dream state, your senses are closed, but mind is active. Subconscious mind is active, and it is cooking up its own dream, and you remember your dreams also. Sometimes you forget, sometimes you remember. So, in a way, again that dream was objective to you because you are able to say something about the dream. About the deep sleep state also, the wonderful thing is you are able to say that you did not experience any objects. You experienced nothing, as it were. But somebody should be saying that, isn't it? How do you know you didn't experience objects in your deep sleep state? Which means you were there. Awareness must have been there for you to know that it was a state of deep restfulness where I did not know anything. So you see, this simple logic, it's actually called a Mahatarka of Mandukya Upanishad. It is telling you there is an invariable in the midst of these variable states of experiences. There is an invariable running through them, a common denominator to all these 3 states, and that is why it points to the ontological reality of the self. Consciousness is always there. It is not essentially inferential, it is experiential. If you have built a very sensitive mind, you can know it by yourself through these techniques. And this is the common denominator of all your experiences. That is why they say consciousness is fundamental to mind function. Because it is there, mind is functioning. Mind is functioning, body is functioning. You identify with body mind and you function as a particular individual. But the source factor is consciousness. तो देखिए ये एक बहुत बड़ा साइंस है ना? There is no belief system here. There is no believing in something. If you carry on the experiment on yourself through a very steady apparatus, you will arrive at these facts yourself. No question of belief. So this is the kind of outlook which you find in the Upanishads. These rishis were stalwarts in a sense, spiritual stalwarts. They were of very strong body and mind, and that is why this inner penetration, it becomes something very obvious, something natural to a well-developed mind. If this inner penetration, you see, when Max Muller tried to describe, you know how he described the Vedic rishi? He used to say, they were of that type because they did not have a public to please and critics to appease. You are just after knowledge for its own sake. You are just tracking being, pure consciousness for its own sake. If you pursue knowledge like that, you will get the very heart of knowledge. So all these techniques are trying to show you the glory of this knowledge, self-knowledge. And it will actually lead you there. I told you all that you require is a very steady mind, which you can manufacture through meditation. Now, if we put all this together, don't think this knowledge is exclusive to this culture. Although yes, the greatest emphasis it found, you can say the greatest importance was given here, and the greatest research for the longest periods of time in world history took place here in India. There are many mystics all over the world who have felt the truth of this, that consciousness is primary even to mind function. Consciousness is the fundamental thing about human life. Whether they called it the Atman or self or whatever, that is a different thing. Naming is a different issue altogether, but the essential content is the same. This has been intuited by a number of mystics everywhere. You know, as far back as 11th century, there was one mystic called Avicenna. He was a Persian polymath who was also a physiologist. He was a doctor of his time, and he conducted a very simple experiment. ये experiment भी यहीं पे आप conduct कर सकते. It's a thought experiment. You see, he said, if I manage to get a man floating in air, it's a thought experiment, so you can imagine anything. Suppose you were floating in the air. Imagine it, you are floating in the air, cut away from all sensations. Absolutely no sensations of the external world. In fact, you don't even have the sensation of your body. You are floating in the air. Imagine this. Now he put the question, if you are floating in this in the air, totally cut away from sensation, do you have a sense of your presence or not? Do you have a sense of your presence? Yes, I am there and I am cut off from all sensations. So he said, you see, self-awareness is always there. This is knowledge by presence and not knowledge by sense data. You see, it's such an important observation. What is he telling us? This is knowledge by presence, not knowledge by sense data. And later on, you know, this argument was taken up even by Descartes, and then he made this famous statement, I can abstract from the supposition of all external things, but not from the supposition of my own consciousness. I can never separate that from me. I can never exclude that from my experience. I always am, whether there is sensation or not, whether there is mind activity or not, whether there is memory or not, awareness is always there. So this experience is the common experience of all mankind, because it is the truth about your personality. It is the unchanging truth about you. And this truth has enormous effects on the human personality, because I told you, if you essentially understand you the subject are experiencing everything objectively, you get a hold over the objective. Otherwise the object will carry you away. ये देखा है ना अपनी लाइफ में. See, when we talk of practically applying Yoga and Vedanta, this is where the practical application comes. When you know you are distanced naturally from your thought process, from your emotion, you can handle them better. So this has enormous usage. We will go into it in further detail. Initially, you must know these things about self-knowledge, about the self which we are discussing. At first glance, well, to put it in an equation form, the equations may appear quite bizarre. It's something like quantum mechanics, you know. It may appear somewhat strange to you, because what is this fundamentally telling you? It is telling you mind activity, mind itself is external to your experience. It is objective to your experience. So what do they arrive at as a result of this? They arrive at the fact that if you think you are the body, time and space and causation, all this, you are in time, space and causation, because you are identified with the body. If you think you are the mind, time and space and causation are in you, because they are in the mind. And if you think you are awareness, everything is in you. Subject and object is one seamless reality. So, this has to be arrived at not like this, but through experience, which means through a certain amount of yoga. And then we will understand the depth to which they have gone. That is the way to understand it. Do not think only through logic you can understand it. You can arrive at it through logic, but to experience it, because usually what you mean by experience is getting into that state. For that, a certain amount of training of body and mind is required. Although self-knowledge, experience of self is again not objective, isn't it? It is your own being, it is of the nature of being and becoming. It is the nature of becoming the subject, being what you really are, but it requires a certain amount of training. Anyway, now I want to go into Indian philosophical systems, the orthodox and heterodox philosophies, in order to help you understand how they have observed. You see, this Vedic thought which we were discussing, that the essence of that is the Upanishads, right, Vedanta. Now, this condensed into six systems of philosophy. When did this happen? See, the Vedic thought 4000 BC, I told you, very long back, but these philosophies were formed in between 6th century, 6 BCE to 4 CE, first 4 centuries of the Common Era. Between this period, these 6 philosophies were framed, as it were, the frameworks were created. So, these philosophies are condensates of Vedic thought by different philosophers. Through their own practices, they arrived at certain convictions which they made into philosophies. Thought constructs these are, but all of them, the speciality of these, Shad Darshan kehte hain inko, the speciality of these philosophies is they all speak of this Atman. They all speak of a unit of pure consciousness as being the essential nature of the human being with slight variations. But this is the essential thing about the human being. All of these philosophies dwell on this. Just look at this slide. Here you have all the 6 philosophies described, and very clearly you can see, usually they are combined like this: Nyaya Vaisheshika, Sankhya Yoga, and Purva Mimamsa and Uttar Mimamsa. Uttar Mimamsa is called Vedanta. So, the culmination of their thinking is in the Vedanta, but it starts with different, I told you, different philosophers according to their understanding, they framed these, made these huge philosophical frameworks. Nyaya is basically was propounded by Gautama in 2nd century BC. It deals with correct thinking, how to think properly, right? Something similar to Western analytical philosophy. Then Vaisheshika is another philosophical system by Kannada, 6th century BC, atomist and pluralist, it is atomic realism it is called. I do not want to go into the details of it, because today what we are getting, what we are using, I will only focus on that. And this is also a kind of a scientific analysis of the nature of reality. Vaisheshika system also deals with this. Then you have Sankhya, very important system of thought, because all other systems are using Sankhya psychology. It was framed by Kapila, 1st century BC, dualistic realism, Purusha and Prakriti. You see, he held reality to be twofold, of the nature of consciousness, and consciousness is consciousness itself but immovable. Prakriti is unconscious but movable. So, he said reality is consists of both of these, Purusha and Prakriti, and he propounded many Purushas, that is the uniqueness of the Sankhya system. Consciousness is, because there are so many individuals, there are so many consciousnesses in a way, this is what it means. And the 3 gunas, this also comes from this philosophy. You know about Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. According to the nature of the mind, one understands reality. So, this concept also comes here. These are all the main ideas. I have put it in a very short form for you to understand each philosophy. Then comes the yoga philosophy. This is also deeply linked to Sankhya, because the philosophical framework is the same, but yoga is theistic. You see, it was propounded by Patanjali in 2nd century BC, dualistic framework, theistic philosophy. It believes in a creator God, Ishvara, and Ashtanga Yoga is its speciality. आपने सुना होगा Ashtanga Yoga के बारे में. We will go into all this in detail. This is just an introduction, and of course the goal is considered Kaivalya. Then you have the Purva Mimamsa. It was propounded by Jaimini, again a rishi, and this is actually he propounds that it should be according to the prescriptions of the Vedas, whatever your work, whatever your practice. So, pluralistic realism here, two schools, Prabhakaras and Kumarilas, this is concerning Purva Mimamsa, then finally is Vedanta. In a way you can say the entire thinking culminated with this philosophy. This is essentially the Upanishads. Vedanta Nama Upanishad Pramanam. The Upanishads means Vedanta, the essence of the Vedas, and it is an absolutist philosophy, knowledge based. Although there are techniques which are called upasanas, meditation techniques propounded there. And then you have its logical presentation in the Brahma Sutras. There are six sub-schools. Many times we will be talking about Advait Vedanta in perception theory and all that. But remember that Advait Vedanta alone is not Vedanta. There are 6 schools. There is Dvaita, Vishishtha Dvaita, Shuddha Dvaita. Many such schools are there. Different levels of thinking you can say. But finally you can say Vedanta is the culmination. In a way, the science of consciousness culminated with this system, where they discovered there is only one consciousness reflected in different minds, so there appear to be different individuals. But consciousness is not plural in the plural, not that there are many consciousnesses. So, this unitary vision comes to us from the Vedanta, and that is why this is considered to be the culmination of Indian philosophical thought. Now, amongst all these systems, remember these are the orthodox schools of Indian philosophy. Why they are called orthodox? Because they are Vedic, they are based on the Vedas, they believe in the Vedas, they have drawn from the Upanishads. I told you they are condensations of Upanishadic thought as perceived by different rishis in different periods of time. But this Yoga and Vedanta, ye do philosophical systems hai, this has come down to us as live traditions today. Because yoga is a psychological philosophy, it deals with your mind. Any person, if you straight away ask him who he is, he will say, well, I am my mind. What the mind is, that the man is. He feels himself to be mind. If he thinks deeply, he will come to awareness. But usually he thinks he is the mind. So this, when you think you are the mind, this philosophy is very useful to you, because it is dealing all with the mind, with the different prakriti jo bolte hain, the different functions of your mind, structural and functional classifications of mind, how the mind behaves, the different states of mind, and how to change the nature of the mind. Everything to do with mind you will find in this philosophy. So, it is very useful to us today. All the yoga techniques that you see all over the world derived in some way from these philosophical systems, from these practices. So, this is the source matter, and Vedanta has come down to us as a live philosophy because it is the truth about you. So, the truth cannot remain hidden. So, these two systems of thought are something which we are using even today. The rest of the system, not that we are not using, but they are not that popular. They have not come into common thinking, but these two systems are very strong even today. In fact, any practice or any understanding of religion, philosophy comes from these streams. So, these are the 6 orthodox schools of Indian philosophy. This is not all of Indian philosophy. You may know even Buddhism arose here, Jainism arose here. So, you have heterodox schools of Indian philosophy also. We have, you see, these 3. They are Avedic, which means they are not based on the Vedas. Ye jo Charvak the, they were pure materialists. They believed matter is everything. What I see is the truth. There is no mind, no awareness, no such. So, gross materialists, they are called the Charvaks. So, unki philosophy thi, well, just the material world is the only reality that there is. So, live well, live in the senses and live well, no matter what. So, this school also existed for some time, and then Buddhist schools. Buddhism is a very huge philosophy. You know, it is not based on the Vedas exactly, but it has tremendous influence because again it is mainly phenomenological, and it propounded a very practical kind of yogic kind of techniques for people to dive into higher knowledge. So you have this eightfold path, different schools are there, very strong techniques are there, wonderful terminology is there, strong practices are there, and that's why this is a very popular philosophy. Then, and of course living icons are there, people who are following this path. Then Jainism, of course this is also a wonderful philosophy and a number of practitioners are there. So you see there are orthodox and heterodox schools of Indian philosophy. Then I will tell you the very gist of what we have been discussing in 2 slides before we move on to the next portion, before we move on to how exactly we can experience what we are talking about. Isko karke hum we will end today's session, but before that I want you to see this. See, we asked this question initially, who am I? Now here I want you to just observe, you see, even as the earth and moon are lit by borrowed light, the body and mind become conscious due to the presence of the Atman. This is the crux of what we have been discussing so long. Because there is consciousness, you have conscious experiences in the mind. You become body conscious and the body appears an enlivened entity to you. Now, how can this be known? The light of pure consciousness is reflected in the mind, which is considered subtle matter in Indian philosophy. The mind becomes aware and generates our sense of being. The Buddhi designates this empirical awareness as I. One can track this I back to its source, which is pure consciousness. Did you get the point? You see, because of the presence of this unit of pure consciousness, the mind, its reflection is caught by the mind. Mind is considered subtle matter in our philosophical systems, and the mind gets lit up, as it were, becomes conscious. The mind has this sense of ahankar. It is not actually, ahankar is actually identity, but this I sense, aham, you can say. You know, a very clear mind will have the throb of aham, I sense. इसको स्फुरण कहते हैं संस्कृत में. इसका मतलब है you just feel the sense of I-ness without identification with anything else. So if this can be caught in the mind, you will understand your mental awareness is nothing but a reflection of a source of pure consciousness. This is what they are telling you. So this throb, this I sense can take you to that source if the mind is well trained. So this is the methodology. Through the process of inquiry and great steadiness of mind, you can reach that source. This is the method adopted in the Vedanta. The method of vichar. Just by tracking the I sense, the source of that I sense, it can take you to the core of your personality. This is a possibility. And that is why if you ask, actually the question should be what am I, isn't it? The who is not another person there, it is consciousness. So if you ask what am I, you will see this is the basic picture you get from these philosophies. Pure consciousness or the witness consciousness, that is the real nature of the human being, it is called sakshi. Then the conditioned consciousness, the mind, just look at that picture. That is the reflection of the witness consciousness which gives you the feeling of I am. And externally the whole thing is enclosed in a physical apparatus which is called body. So this is you. If you ask what am I, this is you. Then over this, of course, there is your name, your form, your specialities, your attributes, the identities you have taken up, your epithets, everything, titles. But essentially, this is how they are tracking the core of the human personality structure. Did you get this point? Now, how do we come to this practically? I would just like to dwell a little bit on this. I briefly discussed vichar. Vichar means inquiry. Just by very acute, concentrated, one-pointed inquiry, the I sense will lead you back to the source. If this happens, you know, it happens instantly. There is no process to it. That is why many times in Vedanta you do not find a process like in yoga. Not a technique, because it is a flashing intuition which you encounter. If the mind is very clear, the intuition will come by itself. no process is even required. That's why vichar is a very solid way to go in if you are ready. If you are not, if you are still asking ye kaise experience kiya jaye, then you must take up a meditative practice, which is what this yoga is about. You take up a way of going in, and the common practice suggested in yoga, आपने अगर थोड़ा योग स्टडी किया हो, राज योग, पातंजलि योग, कोई भी योग, you will see essentially they tell you chitta vritti nirod, stopping the thought process. They tell you that, isn't it? The very first sutra of Yoga Sutras is Yogastu chitta vritti nirod. Stop the thought process. Why? Tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam. So that the witness consciousness stabilizes itself in its real nature. That is the end of this process of yoga. So that you are able to find out who you really are. That is the purpose. Now, which technique you adopt depends upon how qualified you are, how ready you are for the experience. If inquiry doesn't get you the experience immediately, there is the process of yoga. It's a graded path, it's a technique to go there. I told you here the technology leads to the science. So, in this mark, you have to arrest the conscious mind in the path of yoga. This is the common path. Usually, it is the yogis who become the Vedantists. Usually, because unless the mind is very firm and stable, that itself means he is a yogi. Then only vichar is possible. So, how do we do that? You have to work on the mind. That is why entire self-management, there is no managing the self. The real self is your glorious true being, which is the Atman. But you can manage the mind. It is essentially, yoga is managing the mind, managing your vrittis, controlling them, changing them for the better, making them positive and arresting them. This is what yoga is about. So, if you adopt a technique, you see even normal creative activity, you can augment it, enhance it if you remove the conscious mind. Have you seen this? You are all brilliant students, you must have seen this. If you are not getting the solution to a particular problem, you leave it for some time. After some time, it will just pop up in your mind. Ye dekha hai aapne? Why does this happen? Conscious thought process has been removed temporarily. Now, there is a very beautiful incident on this, which comes in the life of Rabindranath Tagore. Let me tell you that incident here. See, he was a great lover of nature. Isn't it? Rabindranath Tagore, kitna अच्छी कविताएं लिखते थे वो. So, it would just come out of him when he was in the midst of nature. One day he was traveling on the Yamuna and he was alone in the boat, and there was a hood to that boat, and it was dusk, the sun was setting. So, he went inside that hood and he lit a candle and he tried to write some poetry, but somehow it did not come out of him for that day. On that day, he struggled, and then after some time he stopped because it was not coming out. Then what did he do? He put out the candle and came out of that hood. He came into the open on that boat, and then he suddenly saw the sun had set and the moon had come up, and it was a full moon night, and the moonlight had flooded the entire place. The moonlight, if you have seen the magic of moonlight on waters, the glisten and the very surreal atmosphere it creates. So, that kind of a very beautiful atmosphere had been created there. His mind became so still, it actually went into a state of yoga, and tremendous poetry started coming out. Then he went back and recorded it without even lighting that candle. The candle is your conscious mind. If you shut it for some time, consciously, candle is basically thoughts. If you remain conscious and put down thoughts, shut out thoughts, it will usher you into a different dimension altogether. Without losing your awareness, you should do this. इसलिए योग शक्ति चाहिए. If you can go into that enormous there will be an outburst of creativity. And if you do it with the whole mind, not just with the conscious mind, even with the subconscious mind, self-realization will occur. You will go into the very depths of your being. So, this is a very solid yogic technique. Let me tell you, there is a deep connection between yoga and Vedanta. ये you only through experience you can know it. What is the connection between yoga and Vedanta? See, in yoga में हम कहते हैं, if you commit pran and mind to the heart center, your awareness will remain continuous and unfluctuating. If your awareness remains continuous, thought is an interruption in that. You will naturally set aside thought. Just like how words are an interruption to your thought process, isn't it? When you are deeply in thought, you don't speak because words are an interruption. So also thought is an interruption to the continuous flow of awareness. You will set aside thought if you manufacture that level of intense augmented awareness. This is the key connecting yoga and Vedanta. It is possible to enter into this knowledge just by going to the very depths of your mind. And that is why yoga gives you this equation. You know, the basic equation is mind is equal to thoughts bubbling upon consciousness. So if you remove thoughts, consciousness will remain over. The equation is M is equal to T plus C, where M is mind, T is thoughts, C is consciousness. So C should be equal to M minus T. Consciousness should be equal to mind minus thoughts. इसी को हम योग कहते हैं. चित्त वृत्ति निरोध means mind minus thoughts. So you see, very definite techniques are there for you to arrive at the experience we are talking about. Karna chahiye. All this is about actually doing the thing. If you are not doing it, you will not get anywhere. It is not merely about thinking. You can inquire and think after getting established in yoga. Then it will lead you to the truth of the thing. But essentially it is about handling your mind and body in a way which will take you to this essential truth. So regarding the method, because many people ask these questions, you know, समझ लिया, concept समझ में आया, but how do I get there? How do I do it? So there are definite techniques. This much you should know. We will dwell more upon this in the course of this, these talks, these lectures, and of course the practical session you have. So essentially the picture of yourself which emerges from all this thinking is, the body is the vehicle of the self, the mind is also the vehicle of the self. You, the self, are functioning through the body-mind complex. Isn't it? This is the picture which comes to you. You know, a great scientist, his name was George Wall. He said, a foothold outside the world is required to solve the major mysteries of the world. Science solves the minor mysteries, he said. But to solve the major mysteries, the mystery of consciousness, to solve mysteries like these, you require a foothold outside the mind. Self-knowledge gives you that foothold. That is why this penetration, that's why this science is so important. Standing there, you can understand the functioning of the mind. It actually gives you a foothold in the infinite, so you can understand the finite world better. So this great science has a huge contribution to make. In fact, some of the greatest thinkers of this world have all subscribed to this knowledge naturally, because it is most obvious to your experience. It is most obvious to your sensitive thinking that you must penetrate into this knowledge. And the great usage of it is, let me tell you, you know, the very outlook of any culture depends upon what it considers the human being to be. If you think you are only the body, you know, the crux of the matter lies here. If you think you are only the body, you will only want a material civilization. Only that which satisfies my body, I will only aim at that. So we will have a very sensate civilization. If you think you are the mind, we will have a intellectual civilization, isn't it obvious? We will have a knowledge society. If you think you are the self, the Atman, you will have a value-based society, a society entirely based on values, because consciousness is the only factor which is common in all of us. Bodies are different, minds are different. So a kind of inclusiveness comes through this research. You have found the common factor in all creation. This naturally makes for a very inclusive outlook, a sense of oneness with all existence. So we will actually generate a society of values. You know, when this experience comes, you don't have to tell the person he has to be good or ethical or do things for others. The other person is me in another form. This will be the perception. And that is why naturally it will be a philosophy of acceptance, inclusiveness. It will be a philosophy of oneness. That is why this knowledge is so very important to the evolution of humankind. You know, animal evolution, human evolution, there is a difference. Not that all evolution takes place in the same way. In the human being, after physical evolution, after your survival needs are met, it will go to psychosocial evolution. This is how it proceeds. From psychosocial evolution, it goes to spiritual evolution. So, to augment your evolutionary process, this knowledge is vital, absolutely important. And this knowledge removes all fear. All misery comes from fear, isn't it? You actually analyze your states of negativity and depression. Somewhere fear is the root. When you have a sense of yourself apart from everything else, fear will not remain. A spiritual mind, fear will not be there. Deep rooted fears will not be there. So, a natural cheerfulness will remain. You discover higher and higher levels of happiness. Happiness is actually proportional to awareness. You discover this by yourself. And it gives you a very, very universal outlook, because you know any science is universal. Science, what it is in India is what it is in USA, isn't it? Borders we have drawn, but science cannot change. Science is always universal because it is the truth about existence. So also this science, it is completely in tune with modern aspirations. What do you consider modern to be, tell me? In today's world, what does modern mean? It means a vision which is pan-humanistic, trans-ethnic and all-inclusive, scientific, right? In addition, it is non-ideological also. It is not another belief system. So, this is what we consider modern. So, this knowledge is completely in tune with modern aspirations. It is pan-humanistic, it is trans-ethnic, it is non-ideological, it is very scientific and hence universal. Are you seeing this? And this is all the great gain of this knowledge. What I am telling you is effectively to be able to combine objective knowledge and subjective knowledge is real genius. And I expect this from IITs. You see, you have this benchmark for excellence. Real excellence will come when you have the knowledge of the self and objective knowledge together, and you know how to place where, what to place where. If you only have knowledge of the objective world and no knowledge of yourself, you cannot function properly, isn't it? Isn't this true? So, ye jnaan yahi deta hai. It will give you a comprehensive view of human experience and human goals, human aims, what human life is about. Combining effectively subjective and objective knowledge. This is the kind of education Vivekananda wanted. So, if we can do it effectively here through these courses, through all these discussions, I think our purpose will be achieved. Let us try for it. So, let me end this session here, time is up. We will have some announcement about the practical. So, now first thing is the 5-minute meditation has to be practiced every day. The video has been sent to you, all of you have got it? It's just a 5-minute meditation. एक बार देख लो, उसको practice करते जाना. Why I am telling you what I have been telling you about distancing thought. You the awareness are perceiving, ये natural हो जाएगा उसको करने से. You will see it for yourself, it's your own experience. And so you can handle the thought process better. Anger and depression, hatred, and all this will not come into your life. A lot of balance will come. So that 5-minute meditation is to be practiced every day, and the final practical will be discussed. We will discuss it and let you know. Okay? We will stop the session here for today.